What happens when you treat your allies like enemies? The US just learned the hard way. Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, companies that build nearly a third of all cars on American roads, were hit with a crisis when the Trump administration slapped tariffs on them. These cars weren't made in China, they were built in North America, in places like Ontario, Baja, and Aguascalientes. For decades, Japanese automakers invested billions in US factories supporting American jobs and supply chains. And just like that, they were targeted as foes. Japan's Prime Minister, Shigeru Oshiba, tried negotiating with the US but quickly saw the talks were going nowhere. Tokyo didn't wait around. Japanese companies quietly started cutting US production, scaling back on American market cars, and shifting operations out of North America. This wasn't just a business move, it broke trust. Japan views this as more than a misstep, it's a warning shot. Now they're acting fast to protect their interests. The real question is, does the US even grasp what it's unleashed? Before we dive deeper, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching. Honda and Nissan aren't just big names in the US, they're pillars of the American auto industry. In 2024, 1 out of every 3 cars on US roads came from these brands. Toyota leads as the top seller, Honda ranks 3rd, and Nissan is 6th. Here's the kicker. Most of these cars aren't imports. They're built in North America by American workers using American parts and powering local economies. In 2024, these automakers sold nearly 5.9 million vehicles in the US, a 6.3% jump from the year before, showing their massive footprint. In 2023 alone, Japanese automakers produced over 3.22 million vehicles in the US, accounting for nearly a third of all cars made here. Their operations span 27 states with 29 major factories, 34 R&D centers, and hundreds of distribution hubs. They employ over 400,000 Americans. These aren't just businesses, they're economic engines deeply woven into the fabric of American communities. Japanese automakers are more than just car companies, they're pillars of local communities and anchors of the US auto supply chain. But just how many people do they impact? The numbers are staggering. Their economic footprint stretches far beyond the factory floor. When you factor in jobs from parts suppliers, dealerships, and service companies tied to the industry, Japanese automakers support over 2.29 million jobs across the United States. According to Dr. Thomas Prusa at Rutgers University, this makes them some of the biggest private sector contributors to the U.S. economy, especially in manufacturing-heavy regions. Not slowing down, these companies are doubling down on the future of American autos. Take Toyota, for instance. They're investing $13.9 billion in a massive battery plant in Greensboro, North Carolina. This facility will employ over 5,000 people and produce batteries for electric and hybrid vehicles, meeting the growing demand for cleaner transportation and helping America shift to a greener economy. Honda and Nissan are also stepping up, forging partnerships and upgrading tech to expand their electric vehicle lineups. As the auto industry races toward electrification and automation, the choices these Japanese companies make will shape America's economy, job market, and tech landscape for years to come. The next chapter of the U.S. auto industry isn't being written in Tokyo, it's happening in Tennessee, Ohio, Alabama, and beyond. But here's the kicker, these factories aren't some trade loophole. They're part of a deeply integrated supply chain that supports American jobs. Yet with one stroke of a pen, Washington lumped these longtime partners in with unfair traders, sending shockwaves through the industry. And to sell the move at home, U.S. officials wrapped it in the flag, calling it economic self-defense, protect American jobs, level the playing field, bring car manufacturing back home. It's a catchy campaign slogan, but it misses the mark. The vehicles targeted aren't cheap imports, undercutting Detroit. They're built by Americans for Americans, with parts sourced across North America. Think Toyota trucks from Baja California, Honda sedans from Ontario, or Nissan crossovers from Aguascalientes. These were cars built under a system refined over decades, shaped by NAFTA and its successor, the USMCA. Washington's tariffs didn't just target unfair trade, they disrupted regional cooperation. Worse, they sent a clear signal to America's allies, even years of loyalty won't shield you when politics steer the course. Japan, however, didn't react with noise or retaliation. It acted quietly, decisively. Days after President Trump imposed a 25% tariff on imported vehicles, Japanese automakers were already adapting. Take Nissan. Its top-selling U.S. model, the Rogue, moved 245,000 units in 2024, but many were made in Japan, making them prime targets for the tariffs. Nissan swiftly cut production by 13,000 vehicles at its Kyushu plant in just 3 months, redirecting resources elsewhere. Toyota, meanwhile, leaned on its global network, boosting production in Thailand to dodge the tariffs entirely. The response looked effortless because it was planned. Stephanie Brinley, associate director at S&P Global, estimates Japan's auto production could drop by up to 20,000 units daily. But this wasn't panic, it was precision. Since trade tensions flared in 2018, Japan's auto giants had been quietly fortifying their global supply chains, preparing for a world where geopolitical stability couldn't be assumed. When the tariffs hit, they didn't flinch. They flipped the switch on a long-prepared pivot. What's next for Japanese automakers could redefine global car production, where cars are built, and how supply chains function. Is this the start of a quiet decoupling of US-Japan auto trade, or a tactical step back before a bolder advance? Either way, Japan has made its move. With Washington proving unpredictable, Tokyo is redrawing its industrial map. Southeast Asia is now the focus. Countries like Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia aren't just fallback options, they're becoming cornerstones of Japanese manufacturing. These nations offer more than low labor costs. They provide strategic flexibility and new opportunities to reshape the global auto landscape. They deliver political stability and, critically, a shield from the unpredictable trade shocks coming out of Washington. Curious how fast global supply chains can adapt under pressure? Investment poured in almost overnight. Billions of dollars flooded. Thailand's Eastern Economic Corridor, a region now racing to become Asia's next auto manufacturing powerhouse. Mazda made a bold move, announcing a $150 million investment to build an electric vehicle production line in Thailand, aiming for 100,000 vehicles annually. Toyota, Japan's automotive giant, didn't just diversify, it doubled down. It expanded its EV lineup to 15 models and spread production across 5 countries to hedge against regional volatility. But Toyota's biggest play? A game-changing $2 billion deal with China. The company partnered with Shanghai's municipal government to construct a wholly owned EV plant in the city's Ginshan district. According to China's state-run Xinhua news agency, this facility will anchor Toyota's broader push into new energy vehicles, positioning it to dominate the world's largest automotive market. This isn't just a pivot, it's a reinvention of Japan's industrial future. Facing erratic tariffs and economic pressure from the US, Tokyo didn't wait for the next hit, it walked away from a losing bet. The ripple effects are massive, not just for US-Japan trade, but for America's role in the global auto supply chain. What began in car factories is now reshaping entire trade networks. Japan isn't just tweaking its strategy, it's overhauling its trade playbook. Tokyo is deepening ties with ASEAN nations, fast-tracking new deals, and leaning hard into the CPTP, a major trade pact the US once championed but abandoned years ago. Japan's also forging stronger bonds with India, exploring tech collaborations in semiconductors and EV software. These aren't just agreements, they're signals that Japan is preparing for a world where the US isn't a reliable economic partner. And Japan's not alone. South Korea, Taiwan, even Vietnam, they're all paying attention. If Washington is willing to throw a longtime ally under the bus for a quick political win, who's next? Meanwhile, China's seizing the moment. As the US pushes allies away, Beijing's expanding its influence, especially in Southeast Asia, where Chinese-funded roads, railways, and data centers are popping up fast. Trying to isolate its rivals, America might just be isolating itself. This is a slow burn, not a sudden collapse. Factories won't shutter tomorrow, but the investments will dry up. The global trade landscape is shifting, and the US risks being left behind. New car models aren't coming to US factories anymore. Workers will start noticing fewer shifts, but it won't hit like a sudden crash. It'll feel like a slow fade. Don't be fooled though, the damage is real. While the US struggles, someone else is stepping up. China's not backing down. It's moving fast, forging new alliances. And not just with anyone. It's cozying up to Japan and South Korea, 2 nations that haven't always seen eye to eye with Beijing. Now, old rivals are shaking hands, and that's raising red flags in Washington. China's strategy is sharp and simple. With US sales dropping, China's pivoting to its neighbors, offering them irresistible deals, tax breaks on Korean tech, cheap loans for Japanese businesses, and VIP access to its massive market. In exchange for loyalty, China's pitching a bold idea. Asia doesn't need America. Countries can thrive by teaming up with Beijing instead. This isn't just about trade, it's a power play. China's sending a clear message. The US is unreliable and risky. Join us. It's building an Asian alliance that plays by its rules and sidelines Washington. If Japan and South Korea fully buy in, it could shift the entire power dynamic in Asia. But the US isn't sitting idly by. American officials are leaning hard on Japan and South Korea, warning them not to get too cozy with China. Behind closed doors, the message is blunt. If you side with Beijing, we could scale back our military support, tech partnerships, even intelligence sharing. Now Japan and South Korea are caught in a tug-of-war between the world's two superpowers, forced to choose a side in a high-stakes showdown. Let's talk about Japan, one of America's closest allies, with US troops stationed across its islands. But Japan's economy is feeling the squeeze from the ongoing trade war. Its auto industry, for instance, is struggling to maintain a foothold in the US market. Meanwhile, China is seizing the moment, offering Japan more favorable trade deals. Despite this, Japan's Prime Minister Kishida is committed to strengthening ties with the US. At the recent G7 summit, he reaffirmed Japan's loyalty to America. There's still hope for the alliance, but time is running out. If the United States doesn't act quickly, Japan may have little choice but to pivot toward China. South Korea is in a similar bind. Its tech giants like Samsung are being wooed by China with promises of joint chip-making ventures and greater market access. Yet South Korea is wary of getting too cozy with China, especially given concerns over human rights abuses and strict information controls. Like Japan, South Korea is caught in a balancing act, trying to keep both the United States and China happy. Here's the bigger issue. America's hardline trade policies might be pushing its allies away. Instead of standing firmly with the United States, countries like Japan and South Korea could find it easier and more profitable to align with China. If that happens, the consequences go beyond trade. It could erode US influence globally. If China succeeds in forming a powerful Asian trade bloc, it might lock the US out of key supply chains, weaken the dollar's dominance in global trade, and undermine America's leadership on the world stage. Worse, it could embolden other nations to follow suit, drifting away from Washington and toward Beijing. Now issuing warnings to other countries, don't trust the other side. But from the outside, it looks like both are fighting so aggressively that they're losing trust themselves. Happens when you mistake allies for enemies. The US is finding out the hard way. Tariffs meant to protect American jobs hit Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, companies building millions of cars in North America, supporting over 2 million US jobs. Japan didn't retaliate, it pivoted, slashing US production and doubling down on Asia. This isn't just a trade spat, it's a wake-up call. Will the US rebuild trust or watch its influence fade? Subscribe for the latest on this unfolding story and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.